In this book, Huckleberry tells his own story all by himself. You don't know about me without you read a book called The Adventures of Tom Sawyer. That ain't no matter. That book was made by Mr. Mark Twain, who told the truth, mainly. Well, some things he stretched, but mainly he told the truth. Why, that ain't nothing. I never knew anybody but didn't lie once without being Aunt Polly or the widow Douglas. Now, the widow, she took me in as her son, allowed she was going to civilize me. She used to cry over me and call me a poor lost lamb. She called me a lot of other names, too. But she didn't mean no harm. Then she dressed me up in some of them new clothes, and all I could do is sweat and feel all cramped up. Pretty soon I wanted to smoke. But the widow, she wouldn't let me. She kept saying it was a mean habit and not clean, and I ought to try not to do it anymore. Ain't that the way with some folks? They get down on a thing where they don't know nothing about it. She took snuff, too. But that was all right, because she'd done it herself. Now, her sister, Miss Watson, was a tolerable slim old maid with goggles on, all the time saying, "Don't put your feet up there like that, Huckleberry. Don't scrunch up like that. Sit up straight. Can't you try to behave?" Then she told me all about the bad place. I said, "I wish I was there." Oh, she got mad then, but that didn't mean nothing. All I wanted was change. All I wanted was to go someplace. I wasn't particular. She kept saying how she's going to live her life so as to go to the good place. Well, I didn't see no advantage of going where she was going. So I decided I wasn't going to try for it. I've been going to school about 4 or 5 months. I learned how to read and write and say the multiplication tables up to 6 times 7 is 35. I didn't think I'd ever go any further than that if I lived forever. Then one night I lit my candle and I was going up to my room, and there sat Pap, his own self. Oh, he tore into me something awful about putting on the airs and getting dressed up and going to school. Pretty soon he'd catch me and took me up to a little cabin over on the Illinois shore. I thought I'd never get a chance to run off. Pap, he was mighty handy with his hickory. I could hardly stand it. I was all over welts. Then one night, he gets drunk and goes over into town, come back saying how folks was talking about there's going to be another trial to get me away from him and give me over to the widow for my guardian. He got to cousin and says, "Well, I see the widow try to get you." Whenever his liquor began to work, he'd almost always go for the government. This time he said, "Why, you call this a government? There stands a law getting ready to go for a man's son, his own son, which he's had all the trouble and anxiety and expense of raising up. Just he got that son all raised up, ready to go to work, do something for him, give him a rest. There stands a law ready to go for him. Now you call that a government? Why, look here. There's a free nigger over there from Ohio. Mulatto. Most whites, a white man. He had on the whitest shirt you ever see. Shiniest hat. Gold watch and a chain. What do you think? Why, they said he was some professor from some college, could talk all kind of languages and know everything. That ain't the worst. They said he could vote when he's at home. Well, that'll let me out. Why, it was election day and I was getting ready to go vote myself. I wasn't too drunk to get there. They told me there's a country in this state, in this country, let that nigger vote, I'd draw it out. I said, I'll never vote again in my life. That's the words I used. They all heard me. This country can rot for all of me. Why, I'll never vote again in my... Oh, Pap, he was so excited he didn't realize where his old limber legs was taking him. He went tumbling head over heels over a tub of salt pork, barked both shins. That fetched the hottest kind of language. Then all of a sudden he lit out with his left foot and he gave that tub a rattling kick, but it weren't good judgment. That was the boot had a couple of his toes leaking out the front end. So he cussed a bunch more, but then he passed out. And I saw my chance. I went out back in the woods and I got that canoe I had been hiding. I laid down that canoe and I just went right down the river. I runned off. Spent some time on Jackson's Island. That's where I met Miss Watson's runaway slave, Jim. He said he runned off too. Well, I promised I wouldn't tell on him. Oh, I knowed I'd done wrong. I know folks would despise me and call me a low-down abolitionist. But I didn't care. I wasn't going back there again. Well, me and Jim, we found a piece of raft, and we started down the river on that raft. We'd travel nights and hideout days. We just let that current take that raft wherever it wanted to. It's lovely to live on a raft. We'd lie on our backs and smoke our pipes and look up at the sky at nighttime. Not a cloud in it. The sky is ever so deep when you lie on your back in the moonshine. I never knowed it before. Or how far a body can hear across the water. Well, pretty soon I'd fall asleep, and Jim, he wouldn't even wake me when it was my time to watch. He was always looking after me like that. Then I'd wake up, and there he'd sit with his head betwixt his knees, a-moaning and a-moaning. I never let on, but I knowed what it's about. He was thinking about his wife and children way up yonder. See, Jim, he'd never been away from home before in his life, and he was feeling low and homesick. I reckon he cared about his folks about as much as white folks care about theirs. Don't seem natural, but I reckon it's so. Well, we kept talking about Cairo down at the foot of Illinois where the Ohio River comes in. We said when we got down there, we would sell the raft and get on a steamboat and go up by the free states, thus be out of trouble. Jim, he said he felt most feverish and trembly being so close to freedom. He said when he got up there, he was going to go to work and never spend a cent. And when he got enough, he would buy his wife, which was owned on a farm near Miss Watson. And then they'd both go to work and buy the children. And if their master wouldn't sell them, why, he'd get an abolitionist to go steal them. Woo! That most froze me to hear such talk. Why, Jim, he'd never talked like that in his life, coming out flat-footed, saying how he's going to steal his children. Children which was owned by a man I didn't even know. Why, a man never done me no harm. It was coming into my head he was most free, and who was to blame? Me. It was coming down on me what this was I was a-doing. My conscience started to stir me up hotter and hotter, and finally I said, leave me alone, will you? Tomorrow morning, first light, I'll paddle ashore and I'll tell. Well, pretty soon it gets light, and Jim, he thinks he's Cairo. I said, no, you better let me paddle ashore and see. It might not be, you know, Jim. So he gets a canoe ready for me, puts his coat down in the bottom for me to sit on.